Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm very happy to see you guys again. Sorry about the long hiatus. Unfortunately, I got COVID and the rest is history, I guess. So today I really want to introduce to you a very cool thing. So this right here is an SFIC core. And what I love about it is that it's just, there's so many things you can do with it. With master keying, the possibilities are almost endless. They're fun to work with. And the concept is really great. You can essentially give a property management the control key, and they can essentially swap out cores, and then basically they can take the core and then afterwards hand it to you during your business hours, and just really reduces a lot of the service calls and stuff like that. And generally speaking, it just makes everything a lot more organized. So I'm going to talk about a few things really quickly. So today, what I really want to talk about is kind of on the locksmith side. How can we perhaps go ahead and try to key these locks up, and how can we come up with a system? Now, in some of the manuals that I've read, Best does recommend that if you do have a large master key system, you should be contacting Best, and Best can go ahead and design a system for you. Maybe you might have heard of systems like Master King or some other master keying software, but I find that sometimes actually using paper and pencil and just really actually using the general maths, that is what I find to be most fun. And I find that there's a lot more room to customize things. So today I'm going to show you guys kind of how I would go ahead and key up these SFIC cores and really try to design a system. So this is something that I would recommend if you're doing a medium, like a small to medium master key system. If you're doing something that's very big, then maybe a software would be better just to try to keep everything in track and reduce error. But today we're going to be talking about kind of your 3-level system. So by that I mean you have a control key, you have a master key, and then you have a change key. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. Now, a few things that I'm going to talk about here. First thing, you're going to have a core. You're going to also have to make sure that you have, if I can get this to focus right here, you're going to have a core of any keyway. You're going to have blanks. You have to have a machine to cut the key. So traditionally you would use a best punch, so it could be the blue punches from A1, it could be the green, or the Pro Lock punches I meant to say. You can even get the A1 green punch, like the big one. You can even get the punches directly from Best. But my company, I don't do as many SFIC to justify the purchase of a dedicated punch, so I usually use a Freeman 2 to do everything, and that's why I have this really cool jig. Now, generally speaking, when you're going to do biddings and stuff like that, you always count from tip to bow, because that's kind of how keys are cut. If you put the key into a punch machine, you index it into the first cut, you pull the crank, and after it cuts the thing. What happens is that when it cuts a key, it automatically pushes it towards the bow. Now, because the Freeman 2 is something that is mainly for bow end to tip, just for the ease of cutting keys, reducing any sort of errors, and for the math, we're going to be sticking with bow to tip. So without further ado, let's go ahead and try to take a look and see what kind of math we have to do. And I'll talk about, I guess, the system and how it works, the progressions, all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the first part. Alright folks, so welcome to the next part of the video. So now we're going to talk about kind of how to design the system. Now, a few things that we have to recognize are the nature of the system, the way the system is designed, the way A2 system works, and of course how the maths work as well. Now, the thing is, when we're talking about SFIC A2, there's a few keys that you have to keep in mind. There's going to be the control key, the master key, and the change key. Now, before I continue, I kind of want you to think about how the system would perhaps work in the real world. So, imagine we have a dorm room. Okay, so the dorm room is going, or not a dorm room, sorry, a dorm building. So let's say you have 5 floors in the building for student housing, and you want to have a system where you have a large master key which will open everything. Then afterwards you want to have a floor master, so perhaps that would be handed into the RA, and the RA would use that key to open everything on their floor but nothing else. And then of course you also have the change key, and that change key is going to be what's used by students to open their own dorm rooms and nothing else. Now, being that we have this, we also want to go ahead and remember, because it's an SFIC system, we have a control key. And the idea of an SFIC system is so that you can use a control key, insert it into any one of these cores, and pull out the core so that you can easily replace the lock without having to do anything fancy. So, for the sake of convenience, control key is almost always going to be the same for everything, which means whether I'm taking a lock off on the 5th floor, the 3rd floor, the 1st floor, any floor, the control key should be working in that lock. That means the control key is going to be working, that means the control key is going to be the same for every single core in that building. Now, because that's the case, the control key is going to be treated as the highest level master key in this kind of system. Now, although the context of this video does not include a grandmaster key or anything like that, a lot of the ideas are going to be the same, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be showing, I guess, how to go ahead and do the maths and design a system. So the control key, again, is always going to be the highest level. Now, the master key is still going to be a pretty high level, but the thing is, it's not as high as the control key, because the thing is, the master key cannot take the locks apart, like you can't remove the cores with that master key. So, generally speaking, I like to make it so that the master key, although it's of a higher level, you want to make sure that you can't take the master key and cut it down to make it work as a control key. Now then afterwards, of course, we have the change key, which is going to be handed into, handed over to a lot of tenants, and we want to make sure that they can only open their own doors and nothing else. So if that's the case, we want to make sure that the change key cannot be cut down to work as a master key, and we also want to make sure that the change key cannot be cut down to work as a control key. But likewise, we also want to make sure that the master key cannot be cut down to work as a control key. So to do this, we have to make sure that at least one of the cuts of the control key is going to be shallower than all the rest of the other levels. The master key must have a cut that's also going to be shallower than the change key, and the change key we don't really need to worry too much with regards to cutting down or anything else like that, because, I mean, no one's going to try to cut a master key down to work as a change key. That would be kind of silly. Now, the next thing that we have to also consider is, in addition to the security, we have to think about the longevity. Now, if we have a change key, and we start with the number 9 cut closest to the bow, that might work, but in a very heavy use system, long term, the biggest problem is that the change key with a number 9 cut or a super deep cut closest to the bow would actually introduce major problems with key breakage. Especially for a very heavy use system, what we'll find is that a lot of times people will try to insert the key, and because maybe they have a heavy key ring, or maybe people are just heavy-handed, especially when they're a little bit too heavy-handed and the lock becomes worn and the key becomes worn, that number 9 cut does not leave very much metal in that space. So as such, what we'll find is that the key will actually crack or bend or sometimes completely break at that position. So generally speaking, for a change key, I would advise against using a deep cut like a number 9 closest to the bow. The master key, I don't want to use a number 9 either, but I could use a bit of a deeper cut, because the thing is, while it is still being used quite a lot, it's not used as much as the change key I find in a lot of systems. The control key, however, is seldom ever used. So that one, if we do have a number 9 closest to the bow, it's not a big problem. Another thing is I always like to go ahead and try to stagger everything. So I like to think about, with even odd cuts. I like to go ahead and try to design a system like that, so that this way I have a large kind of variation of what biddings are like. So instead of getting a control key that's like 000200 and could probably be raked open super easily, I like to be able to create an even odd system so that perhaps we can afford a little bit more pick resistance. So without being too technical, which is hard to do in this kind of technical part of the video, let's kind of begin and see what kind of number we can use. Now, usually I would start with the control key to go ahead and choose a number, but I'm going to start with the change key because we already know that we want something that's very, very shallow. So let's just start with a even number, just because I like it that way. Alright, so change key, let's use a very shallow number. Now if you take a look at the depth chart, best goes from 0 to 9. So the shallowest cut that you can use in the even position is a 0, and it progresses down to 2, 6, 4, and 8. So let's use a number 0. Okay, we want to make sure that the change key is going to be a shallow cut over there, and then the master key we can go ahead and keep progressing it down. So let's say we'll use a number 2, because that one's still going to be used fairly often. So I still also want to afford a little bit more strength. Now the control key then over here, I can go ahead and choose a different bidding, and so let's just use something a little bit different. Let's say, I'll do a number 8 cut. That's not a problem. Okay, so if we're taking a number 0 over here, we still have the positions, depth positions 4 and 6 that you can progress down. So if let's say you're doing you know, a change key for a different door, at least 4 and 6 are still available to use for those positions. Now, let's go over to the next cut. The next cut over here, I want to make sure that the control key has at least one cut that is going to be shallowest from everything else. Now we already chose an even number over here, so let's go ahead and progress in. Let's say we'll do an odd number. So I want to use something that's pretty shallow, so let's use a number 1 over here. And now because we chose an odd number, we have to go ahead and progress it 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So master key, I want to make sure that it's going to be a little bit, I mean, that's going to be shallower, or sorry, it's going to be deeper from the control key, so it's pretty easy. I can just do 1, 3, and 5. Okay, now let's go over to an even number again. So this one I'm going to do a 0, and then the master, we can go ahead and progress it down to 2, and then we can do a number 4. Okay, let's do an odd number again. So let's do control key. This time I'm going to do a 3. I want to go ahead and kind of, I guess, vary it a little bit more. So 810, 3. Master, we can choose a number 1. Change key, we can do a number 5. Okay, so now let's keep going down. So again, we're doing a 7-pin system, so basically it just goes so on and so forth. So let's just keep going with it. We won't cut the video. 8103, and then we'll do another 0 over here. And then let's say for variation we'll do a 4, and we can do a 2. Now, then afterwards what we can do is, now the thing is you don't have to progress every single chamber. You can actually hold the last 2 chambers, and generally speaking I like to hold a few chambers if I'm doing a small master key system so as to hopefully not introduce any phantom keys. I'll kind of explain what a phantom key is like in another video when I'm doing, I guess, just a master keying video only. But the idea over here is that we want to try to go ahead and have as many progressions we can do, but we also don't want to introduce any phantom keys to, I guess, perhaps even reduce the integrity of the system. So we're going to do 0, 5, 4, 5, 2, and then we're going to go ahead and do, just for variation, we're going to do a control key. We're going to do, let's say, 5, and then we'll do 0 again. The master key, we're going to go ahead and do, let's say, a 7. Okay, so we can do a 7 again over here, and then we'll do a 2 and a 2. So with regards to that, that's done. That's all we need to do when we're trying to design the system. So then afterwards, what we can do is, if you really wanted to, you could even try to kind of visualize what the keys are going to look like. So if you're worried about whether your key is going to look like a blank or if it has descending cuts, you can always just try to visualize it. So number 8 would be, so I'm just going to only do it for the control key for time's sake. So 8103050. So this would be kind of like a number 8. This would be kind of like a 5. This would be like a 3. This would be like a 0 right here, up there. We're going to go back to the number 5, which is going to look somewhat like that, if I can hold it together. And then afterwards we're going to do 0 again. So if you take a look like that, that kind of bidding, it's pretty unlikely for someone to go ahead and try to rake it open. So with regards to that, we can take a look at the control key. We got that, the master key, same thing. And then the change key is going to be pretty decent also. You can always try to draw that out. But once you're satisfied with this, then we can go ahead and proceed towards the key cutting portion of it, which is very exciting. So stay tuned for the next part. Alright folks, so we've arrived to the next part of this video. Now the thing is, unfortunately we don't have the most ideal angle here, but I'm going to kind of show you guys how I tried to cut a key on the frame in 2 for this. So the first thing over here is I always like to go ahead and have all the information ready at hand. Now you might have noticed that the safety guard is removed. That's only for the purposes of this video. During normal cutting procedures, you should absolutely make sure that the cutting guard is there. So we have all of the bidding information over here, and for the sake of this video, I'm only going to go ahead and cut one of the 3 keys because, I mean, the keys are cut exactly in the same way. So we can go ahead and just use one and I guess you'll get the point. So first thing is, the standard jaw that it comes with doesn't always clamp the keys very nicely. So I always like to go ahead and replace the jaw very simply by just going ahead and removing this right here, and then we use a dedicated jaw that is for SFIC. So pull that out. Then we're just going to go ahead and pull the springs out. Then when you're putting this jaw in here, you want to make sure that those teeth are facing the cutter. Those are essentially going to be what mark the spacing for this. And the reason why they have it like this is so that when you do have number 9 cuts and such, you can cut them. But in addition to that, especially if you have WA or WB or any of the weird PKS system keys, the key will definitely go ahead and hold properly. So usually you'd have a kind of bearing in the middle, but I don't know why when I got my machine it never came with it, so it is what it is. So let's go ahead and cut the actual let's cut the control key first. We're going to first put the key in, load it all the way into the tip. Now, the way this works is that for best, it's going to be 262 thousandths of an inch if we're dialing it in from the bow end. Then afterwards, we're going to go ahead and dial in the spacing increment, which is going to be 150 thousandths of an inch. So that's going to be between, let's say, the first and the second cut. The spaces are going to be 150 thousandths of an inch apart, which means 3 revolutions of the spacing dial. So let's go ahead and just dial it all the way to the bow end. We're going to go ahead and do a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to do 262, which is simply 250 plus 12. Okay, and so now we have that. I'm going to see if I can try to perhaps show how this whole procedure works. And unfortunately, it looks like this thing is actually blocking it. But we'll go ahead and just show you what the procedure looks like. So start the machine. The number 8 cut is 218 thousandths of an inch on the depth end. So let's go ahead and do that. 218 thousandths of an inch, 262. Make sure that we have everything properly aligned, and then we're going to go ahead and cut it. Like that. 3 revolutions, 1, 2, 3, right back on the dot with the 12. We're going to do a number 1 cut, which is a 305 thousandths of an inch. Now I usually like to also go ahead and try to widen the cuts just a little bit, but for this one we're not going to worry about that because it works just fine. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do a number 0 cut, which is a 318. It's pretty much a no cut, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway just for the purposes of this video. Okay, so 318. Go ahead and center it over here. Just barely kisses the blade there. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go ahead and cut a number 3 cut, which is a 280. So that's 250 plus 30. Let's go ahead and do that. 280 with the 12. Put that cut into there, and then 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go ahead and do number 0 cut, which is again a 318. So 300 plus 18. Pull that all the way down like that. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to do a number 5 cut. 5 cut is a 255. 55, 12. Done. Like that. And then we're going to go ahead and do 1, 2, 3 like that. And then we're going to do a number 0 cut, which is a 318. Okay, so 300, back to the number 18 over here. Make sure we got everything there. Okay, kisses the blade, and that's it. So that's how you cut the key. And then if you take a look, of course, you have a bunch of burrs and such, so you want to make sure that you take those off. And then I'm going to cut the rest of the keys, and we're going to go from there. Alright folks, so unfortunately I don't have a whole heck of a lot of battery power left, but now we have all of our 3 keys cut. Now all that's left to do is we have to go ahead and do the pinning chart. So, I'm going to show you those are the 3 keys there. Let's just go ahead and do the pinning chart. So, this is how I usually do it. Again, we're doing bow to tip just because that's what we've been doing. So, again, like I said, original best systems, if you're using original best equipment for everything, always tip to bow. So let's take a look and see how we're going to do it. the way I usually like to do it is this. The topmost pin I'm going to say is the driver pin. Then afterwards I have the control pin. So that's going to be the pin that's going to be between the master and the key pin. Then we get the master pin, and of course we have the key pin. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take a look at the actual bitting chart again. So to determine what key pin to use, it's very simple. Between the change and the master key, we have to select the actual smallest number for the key pin. So if I show you this, our key pin is going to be 0 in the first position because 0 is smaller than 2. Next one, 5 and 3. 3 is the smaller one, so we use 3 key pin. 2 is a smaller one from 4, so always 2. Then afterwards, the next one we're going to use is a number 1. And then afterwards a number 2. And then a 7-2. Now for the master pin, it's simply going to be the change key and the master key, basically the difference between those depths. So we know that because 7 and 2 are the same in the master key and the change key, we do not put a master pin over there. Then the next thing that we have to do is we have to take a look. Master key over here is 2 from every single one of these. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do 0 from 2. You see it's going to be, 0 from 2 is 2. Then after you do, 2, yeah, so anyway, 0 from 2 is 2. Then after is 3 from 5 is 2. Then 2 from 4 is 2. And then afterwards, 1 from 5 is 4. 2 from 4 is 2. That's all we need to do for master pins. Now, the driver pin is very simple. It's going to be 13, and we subtract whatever control key cut we have from 13. So we're going to take a look and see. 13 minus 8 is a 5. Okay. 13 minus 1 is 12. 13 minus 0 is 13. And then afterwards, 13 minus 3 is 10. 13 minus 0 is 13 once more. 13 minus 5 is 8. 13 minus 0 is 13 once more. Then the last step is very easy. All you got to do is add everything together in that chamber and subtract it from 23. So 2 plus 5 is 7. 23 minus 7 is 16. 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 12 is 17. 17 from 23 is going to be 6. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 13 is 17, plus 6 gives you 23 again. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 10 is 15, plus 8 gives you 23. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 13 is 17, plus 6 gives you 23. 7 plus 8 is 15, 15 plus 8 gives you 23. 2 plus 13 is 15. 15 to make 23, you have to add 8. That's all you got to do. That's how you do the pinning chart. So let's go ahead and pin the lock up. Alright folks, so sorry about the messy bench over here. I don't have the best camera angles either because it's been a long time since I've done it. So anyhow, we're going to try our best to do our best here. So again, we're going from bow to tip for the sake of this video, and the way I usually like to pin these locks up is I have this right here, which is a capping block, and I usually like to use it almost like a pinning block as well, and I'll explain why in a minute. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look. I put the core in first, and before you do anything with the core, you want to check a few things first. You want to make sure that the actual control log over here is out all the way, and you want to make sure that the plug is straight up and down, almost in the same position that you'd put the key in. This is so that the pins can actually fall all the way into the actual chambers. So one of the things that I usually like to do is I like to take the ejector pin, and I take the ejector pin, I make sure that everything's out, then I like to take it, stick it all the way in, just like that, and that would make sure that everything is centered. Then I gently stick it into the capping block, and I do the same thing where I check to make sure everything is centered the way it should be. And now your lock is ready for pinning. So let's go ahead and begin with the first thing here. We're going to go ahead and put in the number 0 pin. Okay. And we're going to put this all the way in, making sure that we put it in the right orientation. Using the ejector pin, I can push it all the way down. Then afterwards I put in the master pin, which is a number 2. And then what we can do is we can take it, and the way I like to do it is I like to just slip it right on top like that, and then just slide it into the hole because it's so thin. Push it all the way down over here. And then afterwards you do a number 16 pin. Number 16 goes straight into here. Okay. And again you push it all the way down. And now we can use a number 5 pin. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the number 5. And that should be complete. Then what we can do is we can insert our spring. And that spring is going to go in all the way. And this is where I take the actual capping pin. And this capping pin is going to go right on top over here. And I want to make sure it goes all the way in over here, so that I can use it as almost like a cap. And what this would do is that this would essentially hold everything down so I can test every key. So I have the actual change key here. Stick it in. It should work perfectly. Okay. Then I use the master key. I should be able to stick that in. That key should work perfectly, which just have to hold this down properly. It works perfectly. And I use the control key, and the control key should be able to go in, and it works perfectly also. As you can see, it only rotates around 15 degrees. So then what I like to do is that I like to go ahead and do this, and then once I'm done with this chamber, I would cap it, which I'll show you kind of how I do in the next part of the video. Alright folks, so welcome to the next part of the video. It's the second last part. The last part I will show you, I guess, stamping of the keys. It's not really SFIC specific, but we'll just do it because why not? So if you take a look over here, this is the setup I have. I have a pinning kit and everything, except what we have here is that everything is totally capped except for that last position there. And if you take a look, all of these caps are nice and flat. They're below flush. And we only have one more over here that we have to do. So we're going to go ahead and deal with that right now. So, first thing I like to do is, again, keep everything inside of the pinning block, or in this case it's the capping block as well. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just go by the pinning chart, and in that position we have to have a number 2 key pin. So we're going to go ahead and stick in a number 2 key pin. Okay. Now, let's say for whatever reason, unfortunately, we selected the wrong pin and something's not working properly. So let's just go ahead and, I guess, try this and see what it looks like. So let's put a number 10 pin instead of a number 8 by accident. And then we're going to put in a number 13 because, of course, we don't know yet that we made a mistake. So once everything is in, you want to push everything down using the ejector pin. Make sure that everything goes back in the core. So let's go ahead and give every key a try. So if you take a look at this key here, okay, we're going to use the ejector pin again, and we're going to stick this all in, try the key, it rotates, that's fine. Okay, now we're going to try the next key, which is the master key, push everything down because again there's no spring yet. We're going to try to rotate the key. Okay, now we're going to try this key right here. Okay, now we're going to push this all down, and we're going to rotate it. And it doesn't turn at all. So because we know that there's a problem in here, and it looks like the actual master and change keys work, it looks like it's the control pin, or the pin that's inside of the control lug that's problematic. So we're going to pull this one out. We're going to pull out the erroneous pin, which we know is a number 10. And we're going to put in the appropriate pin, which is a number 8. Okay, we'll give that a try. Okay, put that pin in, push it all the way down, push the number 13 pin inside, and now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to test every key and see how well it works. So again, master key, push this in all the way, rotate it, works great. Put in the next key, this is the change key. Oh, sorry, that was the change key, this is the master. Okay, key works. Now we're going to try the control key. Same thing. See if it works. And it seems like it works also. Just needed a little bit of a push. So because we know that every key works and we're happy with it, what we're going to do is we're going to go and put in a spring. Now we can put a cap inside of here. And I like to just slip it down like that. At this point you want to use the capping tool, which looks like this. And I like to push everything down. And with one swift motion, use a mallet usually, but you can use a hammer as well. I would usually use a rubber mallet, but whoever used this tool before me used a hammer before, so well, whatever. I guess be a little bit gentle with it. Just go ahead and hit it once. I'm just going to do one more love tap. You should hear that sound. It should be a bit of a change, knowing that everything's flat. Pull it back out. And then this lock should be good to go. So now if you take a look over here, visual inspection should show a few things here. You should have a cap that's flat, that's also below flush. And you should also have, most importantly, a proper working key. So all keys should go in very smoothly with no random jerky motions. They should work. The next one over here should give you the same thing. Perfect. And then of course we can try our control key and it should be absolutely perfect. So now everything has been properly done over here. We're going to go over to the finishing steps of this here because we're not exactly done yet. Alright folks, so we are currently at the last part of the video. So right now we're going to show you kind of how to stamp the keys and also I guess the finishing touches. So I won't stamp all of the keys in this video. I'll only show the stamping of one key just because some of the stuff I'm not too ready to share my secrets with just for safety of some of my clients. So what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of show you how everything works. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lubricate the lock. So when we go ahead and try to lubricate everything here, what I always like to do is I like to go ahead and actually stick the lock or the core inside of the housing upside down, just like that. Now, full disclosure, this lock is not being used on any of my clients' properties. None of the biddings you see are being used on my clients' properties. It's just that some of the techniques I do use for some of my clients, so I like to keep it confidential. So, what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just first start with Houdini, and we're going to spray it upside down like so. Now, if this were being used very heavily in an outdoor kind of setting, fluid film all the way. Fluid film is used for medical locks, but it's also used in the automotive industry for lots of rust proofing. So it's very, very good for that. And I've had very good luck using fluid film in sub-zero temperatures also. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tap it so the lubricant goes down inside. Then I'm going to go ahead and actually stick my key inside of the lock. And we're going to run the key up and down, or in and out. So, we're going to do that right now. Zoom out just a little bit. Okay. And hopefully focus properly. And we're just going to go ahead and pull it in and out, like so. And then I like to go ahead and rotate it back like this, and then do the rotation. So that the first pass, what happens is that the actual lubricant goes into the chambers. Second pass, when it's rotating it, the gravity is going to have the lubricant actually go onto the plug and lubricate everything beautifully. Okay, very nice. So, of course you want to test all of your keys. So, we're going to take our master key. Okay, rotate it. Then we're going to go ahead and use our control key. And, of course, make sure that's properly lubricated too. So, I'm going to put in our finishing touches over here. I'm going to go ahead and try to bring some more light in here. And I'm going to hopefully have everything properly focused here. So, we're going to start with the number 1. So the reason why I like to do number 1, AA, 2 AA is because if, let's say, I have a system of locks AA, and I have multiple doors and there's a lot of construction, that kind of thing, I don't know how many doors are going to come through, you can do 1 AA, 2 AA, all the way up to 10 AA if you want to. But with AA, AB, that kind of thing, you run out of letters very, very soon. So I like to do 1 and then AA, 2 AA, etc., etc. So we're going to do the number 1. Stamp that in. Okay. So now, I'm going to go ahead and very carefully, I'm going to go ahead and try to align everything properly. Okay, and hopefully I get everything in line like so, the way it's supposed to be. Okay, properly aligned. And then I center it, straight in, stamp it. And it's a little bit off because unfortunately the camera's in the way, but that'll have to do. And we're going to keep going. Okay, and that's it. We got 1 AA over there. Now, usually if the camera wasn't in the way, I would make it a lot nicer, but that'll have to do. Okay, so just gonna go ahead and try the key in the lock, make sure it works. Okay, and now all we gotta do is take this core. We can go ahead and remove it from this housing, and then we can install it wherever it's needed. And that's all that's all we need to do. So if you ever need any sort of, I guess, SFIC service, let me know. You can pop me a message. Otherwise, have fun. Stay safe. Stay away from the coronavirus. Stay legal. And God bless. See you on the next video.